All right, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to this is my first YouTube live here. The goal of this one is to be a demonstration on some of the ways that I practice. And I'm actually going to practice during this live stream. I'll show you exactly how I do that. I'll take you through some of my practice routines here. It's also going to generally outline some of the areas of focus, not only for my own daily practice, but also in the Bluegrass Country and Roots School, which is an online program that I run. So everything that I talk about is important in there is something that I focus on a daily basis. And I've broken that into different categories. The categories include playing through chord changes, incorporating rhythms and bowings and different sorts of things into your playing. It also includes different colors, practicing using different colors of sounds in improvisation. So that means using some darker colors from borrowing from blues and minor elements, or serving the song, if it's a brighter, more major song, using some of the more major or brighter modes to color that song in your improvisation more accurately. So I'll kind of demonstrate some of those as well. But I also designed this to be a Q&A. So you'll see on the chat there, I'd love to hear specific questions that people might have about practicing. I'm going to, again, sort of just demonstrate some of the ways that I approach that. Now, whenever I start playing, I love, one of my favorite things to do in the beginning is to use a slow open strings or double stops, just long tones. Now, I used to do this when I was, studying classically. That was a thing that I did all the time as a practice. But now I'm trying to combine my working through chord changes with long tones and tone and intonation and vibrato and things like that. I had a great mentor who told me that you can really work on a lot of different things at once. So usually what I'll do is I'll put on a playlist of this one song that has very simple chord changes. And I have the song saved. I have the song saved basically with all the folk country bluegrass keys. So I'm going to put that song on the background and I'll demonstrate how I might warm up. And I'll spend a good few minutes just showing you exactly how I might do that. What I like to start with is with closed position double stop. So that sounds like this. This is kind of I throw on this playlist first thing in the morning, or when I first start my practicing. So just a song with simple chord changes. So long tones through the chord changes. This is a time where I'm keying into my bow hand. I'm usually playing into a mirror. Let me know if you can hear everything all right. So I'll get this angle on my bow. Making sure that it's straight all the way across. At the same time, I'm working on chord changes. Okay, I'll include unisons and octaves as well. Focusing mostly on bow control and intonation. Now these are all what are called closed position double stops. It's one of the two ways that you can voice double stops, and I have that written down in a page on my site. Now we did a key change here. This tune actually has a key change built into it. Sometimes I'll focus on vibrato here. My general rule of thumb with vibrato in country and bluegrass music is that it's slower and more relaxed than in classical or Irish Celtic styles. necessarily worrying about playing musically. I'm just focusing on these, using the song as a backdrop for focusing on the daily, you know, everyday kind of skills. So I'm paying attention to what parts of my bow I'm least comfortable with. Just kind of observing with curiosity what shifts am I uncomfortable with. Paying attention to all that. So I switched a little bit to different types of double stops there, but in general, I try to focus on just closed position double stops first. All right, now this is a playlist, so I usually have Bluetooth headphones, and this is going to naturally go to the next one. So, a closed position double stop is where you take the notes of an arpeggio. Here, let me pause this just for 1 second. I see a question from Anne-Marie. Closed position double stops there are basically two primary ways of voicing a double stop on a mandolin or a fiddle. And one of them, basically what you have is you have three notes that are in an arpeggio. You know, if you think of a C chord, C, E, G. So closed position, basically we're talking about the ways that you can turn that chord, C, E, G, into a double stop. You could do it in two different ways. You could do close or closed position, where you take every other, or the closest combination of C, E, and G together. So that would be C and E, then E and G, and then G and C again, as it repeats up here, and over and over again. And then the other one I'll demonstrate shortly is open position, where you take every other note. So that would be C and G, then E and C, then G and E, etc. Basically, closed position double stops lead really well from one chord to the next, and open position double stops lead really well from one to the next. So for example, D, if I was doing a bunch of D closed position double stops, they all lead really nice to each other. And same thing with a closed position or open position. So that document itself, if you're a visual learner, I have those written down. And also, if you search on my YouTube channel, just double stops, there'll be a demonstration of me playing through the closed and the open position double stops. And I treated it very academically at first. Now I try to smoothly switch from one to the next. So I hope that answers your question here. I was on now the third key in my playlist here. And I'll go through this entire 25-minute playlist just focusing on closed position double stops and long bows and things like that. So we're in the key of A now. So I'm seeing if I could do fast bow, slow bow. Let's see. One thing I've been thinking about recently is where the bow is closer to the fingerboard, softer sound, or closer to the bridge, louder sound. All things I could focus on while playing through double stops. These are all closed position double stops. And again, this can really stay fresh every day because there's all sorts of things I can focus on. usually from this angle. Sometimes from this angle. Now my take on double stops is you learn the straight major double stops first, which are just the three members of a major chord, and then from there you can add more colorful notes. So like a seventh or a sixth. So I'll highlight. I could focus on playing sixths or adding the sixth note. Oh, sorry. That's the sixth. That's the sixth. Or I can focus on putting flat sevenths in there. And going home. There's ninths. Let's see, seventh. There's the ninth and the flat seventh, things like that. So you can add more colorful double stops as well. In fact, on my website, I have a PDF that's specific to what I would refer to as bluesy double stops, which is where you're using basically the flat seven or the fifth. And whenever I'm practicing, I target those. That's like an example of one of those, right? So those sorts of more darker double stops and things. Let me pause this playlist for 1 second. Just if you're joining now, this is a 25-minute playlist that I use to practice pretty much every day for different reasons. And I see another question here. You have a reminder, you can throw your questions in the chat at any time. This is an open Q&A, but also a demonstration on some of the ways that I practice. So I see here a question. I'm guessing drones would be good for this too. Yes. Now drones. So here's my thought on drones. I think drones are to a drone when you're practicing, this kind of specific type of music, or really any type of music, is get a droney note plus some rhythm. So I have this backing track that I would use, for example, that's just a D chord, not just a D note. So I think this is sort of superior in some ways to a drone because it can give you both the tonality, but also the general rhythmic feel of whatever genre. So this is like a bluegrass kind of folk drone, but you could also have it swung or something like that. So now you can kind of practice. This is just on YouTube. I searched, there's a bluegrass backing track that's called Nothing But D, like the D chord over and over again. So it's free. It's on YouTube. I use it often. So you can just focus on, say, like D licks, or you can do the double stops all on the D chord. So this is, as that one chord just drones on here, we can really get a sense for whether notes are bright or dark. That's how I kind of refer to them. So that's a bright sound. A major blues sound. That's a really bright sound, whereas I think this is a more dark sound. Right, that's when you hold it up against just one chord, you can kind of see that more clearly. So that second sound I use is minor blues, which is based in the minor pentatonic scale. So that's kind of a darker sound that you could use over a D chord. In bluegrass and country music, because there's a lot of kind of blues element to it, we have both major and minor stuff happening at the same time. You can sort of play either depending on maybe the lyrics to the song or the general kind of vibe. All right, I see another question here. When you're first learning fingering for double stop, do you recommend just practicing the double stops for a single key over a drone or practicing a song? Oh, that's a great question. I would say if you were new to double stops, or if you wanted to like really dig in, I would go through all the closed and open position double stops with a drone like this. So that would sound like this. I'll play it for you. You can do the same thing with open position. And that's the general idea. Now, that's like a deep dive into double stops in terms of executing them. What I would actually do is play through that very slowly and just kind of get a sense for where those double stops exist. And then you've got to kind of judge for yourself, well, which one of these are most accessible to me now versus maybe a year from now if I practice them often enough, you know? And it's not, you know, not everybody can practice double stops every day or whatever, but I wish I could too. I get, you know, there's all sorts of focuses, but basically you want to grab, you know, when you're practicing, you practice all of them, even if they're very challenging. And when you are playing with your band or with in a jam or whatever, you draw upon the ones that you know are kind of a little bit more under your fingers. So we're always kind of making decisions about what we feel is most accessible right now versus later. But I'm never afraid to feel to sound bad in my practice. I always try new things with curiosity to see if I am what seems to be the trouble with that. Is it with my bow? Is it with my left hand? Things like that. So I'm going to move past double stops in a minute. Let me just make sure. Hope Anne-Marie, that answers your question here. I think I would play through them, you know, all the possible double stops first, and then kind of make a judgment on which ones you can use more. Actually, yeah. Then you said before practicing over a song. So yeah, maybe you play through them all, and then you move to a song that you want to practice double stops over, and you just kind of rely on like the 2 or 3 ways that you know you can play a D double stop, right? Whether it's all of them or not, you kind of use those, and then you play through the song on those double stops. So maybe you know like this double stop for D and this one. Those are 3 easy ones, right? Then you play through the song with those shapes being your focus, and then the G double stops that you might know and the A double stops you might know. So you can kind of play through the entire song like that and focus on anything: dynamics, vibrato, shifting, you know, where your bow is, the attack of your bow. One thing I've been thinking about recently is the attack of the bow for kind of bluesy licks. So if I put that backing track back on before, let's see where, here it is. One thing I've been thinking about is the attack. So that's from like the weight of the bow. So I want to be able to kind of really hit that note. And one thing I've noticed is that it has to do with weight, but also if you look at blues fiddlers really closely, their bow, oftentimes they start at this angle, so they're kind of getting this crunch for the start of their note. So it's little things like that. If I hear it and I can name it, then all of a sudden I can start practicing it. So that's kind of a big philosophy to the way that I approach practice and the way that I approach sort of teaching these concepts in my classes. So anyway, that's a general kind of outline of the double stops that I like to do sort of daily. I go through that entire playlist. It goes all the way to the key of B flat. And then I'll maybe take a break and come back to it. And I do the same thing. Maybe I'll demonstrate this in a new key. I'll do the same thing with open position double stops. So that would be wider intervals like this. Let's see. This one's in C. stops. The pattern goes like this. Let's see. That's the pattern. Here's the C chord. That's playing them separately. The F chord. That's what I'm playing as a double stop. I try as best I can to ignore the lyrics of this song. Again, I almost always use a mirror when I practice. Little variations on this practice you can do, like I've mentioned before, things you can focus on your bowing. One thing I was focusing on the other day was, can I place one note of the double stop down and slide with the other one like this? This is also a metered slide. So I think it slides in two ways. Quick slides, which would be like a grace note. Let's see. Or a metered slide, which is like the length of a like a quarter note, I guess. I like those sounds right now. So this would be focusing on, can I keep one note of the double stop down to play a double stop with the other finger? That could be an area of focus in my warm-up. Especially with one finger down. So any of those, I have lots of areas of focus that I kind of combine when I'm doing this double stop work. I mentioned lots of things with the bow. Other things that I haven't mentioned might be smooth transitions, like chromatic transitions. Sometimes I focus on. So like this sort of thing you probably heard before. That's sort of Vassar Clemency thing, right? That's kind of built on transitioning from one closed position double stop to the next with just a fun little, chromatic movement. All right, I see a couple extra questions on the Q&A here. Let's see if I can address those. So for when you're first learning the fingering for the double stop. Oh, I answered that one. Okay, so you recommend practicing closed and open double stops separately rather than mixing them together? Yes, I do. I think that closed position double stops move to other closed position double stops really well, and open position double stops move to open position double stops really well. So if you practice, I do one kind of 25-minute chunk of playing in all the bluegrass or country or folk keys using just closed position double stops. And then I do the same thing using just open position double stops. Now, in a real scenario, there are some that lead nicely from one to the next. But in general, that's the kind of general rule of thumb, is that close lead to close and open lead to open. All right. So that's what I'd recommend for practicing it. Will this Q&A be available for replay on my channel? Well, this is my first live. I will take a listen to it and see if I'd like to keep it up. I think it does save to my channel, but I'm not sure if I'll keep it up. Oops, I just lost connection here. Let me make sure I get that back. So thanks for the questions. We've gotten some good questions so far. Keep them coming. I'm going to move on now to the last couple things I want to say about double stops, and then let me get this up on here. The last couple things I want to say on double stops, and then I will move on to some of the other things I focus on in my practice. Oh, here's some other questions. Okay. Close to close, open to open, hold across the keys. Yes, it does hold across the keys. Yep. When you're when you're, I think you might mean when you're changing, yeah, when you're changing chords, like a closed position C leads nicely, really close to a closed position G chord. Or A leads to D. So that's in the classical world called voice. I'm losing my connection here. It's called a voice leading. Right. So you're usually looking for the closest possible combination of notes leading from one to the next. All right. So last thing I want to mention about double stops is, I mentioned this briefly. You can kind of apply colorful, I think the foundation of double stops are those major, just, basic major chord combinations, but you could also add, sixths, ninths, or flat sevens. Now I have combinations of the ninth and the flat seven and the fifth in a separate document called Bluesy double stops, and I'll demonstrate that really quickly again, maybe over another key here. So let's see, we'll go B flat, big challenge. Okay, so B flat's the last in the playlist I have here, and if I were kind of playing bluesy double stops over this this chord progression, this would be combinations of flat or 5, flat 7, and 9. So that would sound like this. Let's see. I asked my love to take a walk. Just a little. That's the 9th and the flat 7. Let's see. And as we walk, 9th and flat 7. There's the 9th and flat 7. So the reason I practice in context, it may not be, like the most musical choice, but it's challenging myself to think about what the chord is in that moment. There's the 5 and flat 7. Here's a 5 and flat 7 in B flat. Let's see, E flat now, so like there's a flat 7 in the 1. Let's see. Back to B flat. Let's see if there's another version of B flat I could show you. There's B flat. I'm really challenging myself here. Okay, so there's a 9 and flat 7. 9 and flat 7 for that chord. That's the F chord. Anyway, done torturing myself there. Probably picked the wrong key to demonstrate, or it shows me. That would be a good example if I was practicing, and I find it very challenging to find where those really colorful double stops are. That would give me good reason to believe that I should work on playing that specific thing in that specific key, right? Finding flat 7s and 9s and combinations of the 5th and all those in that key is right now sort of not a strength of mine, right? So I'm always kind of paying attention and taking mental notes for in gigs and in my practice of what I can be focusing on. All right, I see another question here, and also there's some new people, so if you want to drop a question in the chat, go ahead. What am I using to play the song in different keys? Oh, I am using a playlist that I made of this song this is just YouTube music. So it's a public thing. I will put it in the chat now. I will also put links to, let me pause for just a second to put up some links of the things that I've been talking about. So here's the playlist that I've been using. You will see, actually, I might have posted this before. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So everything I've talked about so far, and if you're a reader, can be found. I have the kind of sheet music for the bluesy double stops, the regular double stops, and the things I will about to share with you will be found here. There's also kind of videos all over my YouTube channel for this stuff. So if you learn by ear, you can check that out. All right. So yeah, I sent a playlist of that song. That's the exact playlist I use. All right. So I'm going to move now to other concepts. I mentioned transposition being one of the things that I work on. So what I like to do with transposition is I will learn a solo that is a broadly applicable solo. So I try to find things that have common chord progressions. And what I will do is I've learned, for example, I have on my YouTube channel the Bobby Hicks series, which is fairly advanced kind of series of solos, and they're all pretty broad chord changes on really standard bluegrass tunes. So what I'll do is I'll play through those with rather than a metronome, I like to use a drum beat that matches the genre. So if I'm playing country or bluegrass, it has this basic feel, and if I'm playing swing music, it has a different kind of feel to it. So I think this kind of gets the groove of the music a little bit more in the bow if I really lock in. And I try to kind of preserve that. Even if I practice like a fiddle tune with that groove to it. Right, I kind of get a little bit more of the feel of where the backbeat and the emphasis is in the music. But anyway, I'll use this rather than a metronome, and I'll just put it on loop. It's like a 6-minute, again, just a YouTube video of a train beat. And I'll play through some of my simple kind of 1-4-5 Bobby Hicks breaks, because it has a lot of the language embedded in it. So, you know, if you were to learn one of these breaks off of my YouTube channel, kind of the next step would be to transpose them. So let's see if I get this one in A. I think it was in B originally. This is Your Love Is Like a Flower. So that has a lot embedded in it. It has one of the videos I did is on what's called the waterfall arpeggio, which Bobby Hicks kind of used and a lot of other fiddlers picked up. It's this. You can do that in any key. Yeah, I can put the drum link in the chat too. Sure. So I kind of learned that lick in all the keys and things like that, and see if I can switch from chord to chord. So I'll share that drum beat right now. Now remember, it's in YouTube. You can slow it down to whatever you want, but that's the one I use. So anyway, I'll play through that solo a couple times, focusing on tone and things like that. I don't know if he had that last one in there, but that's in another one of his songs. Very idiomatic, right? So then I try the same thing in another key, which I might not get right away. Let's see. Right, so I'll put that same thing through G, and I'll see like where are the areas of difficulty that I find in G that are not in A. that double stop feels a little bit weird, harder to nail than this one. So. Sometimes there's double stops that are available in different keys that were not in other ones, or they become more difficult and you have to find another one. So like this key, that open D and A sounds really good, and also the unison D sounds really nice. But this one here, if I played it exactly what he played, it would be up here. And I might do that in a real life scenario if I can hear myself really well. But if I can't, I probably alter it to something that still kind of preserves the same character, but maybe is a variation of it. So I did that. See, I find that there's a little spot there. So again, with curiosity, I stop there and say, okay, well, I'm going to practice just that last leg. Let's see. Right? So I would do that several times, you know, and then I try it in B, and again, just paying attention. I think that was the key that it was originally in, either B or B flat. So that one's kind of easy for my fingers. Now C, I probably don't have. Let's see. See, that one's weird. Probably that. There's a lot of holes in C right there, right? And what that means is a lot of that vocabulary is in my fingers in the key of G, B, and A. Oh, actually, well, let me finish that thought. It's there, but it's not quite in C yet, right? C involves some shifting and some, you know, going in and out of second position that as I practice, I realize, okay, I can work on that. That could be an area of the next 10, 15 minutes of my practice. Well, here we go. The track just ended. So I would put this, I found that there's a loop feature on my phone that's not on a desktop. So oftentimes I'm doing this with Bluetooth headphones. You could do it, you know, right now I have it on a speaker, but I'll just put it on a loop using the little settings cog button. There's an option to loop the video. And then, you know, that drum track is 6 minutes. I'll just, you know, I usually do that for 15, 20 minutes. Those are usually the little bursts of practice that I'll do. But anyway, I recognize, right, like that C isn't super comfortable. Oh, that's the thing I wanted to say. So I don't play these. I don't transpose to all the keys. I only transpose using 4 different starting points, right? So I'll play either a fiddle tune or ideally a more simple melody in starting on each finger. So starting on open finger. If you practice them that way, you get them in all the different keys. So rather than thinking that you have to play it in every key, I just start in each one. Because then in a real life scenario, you have that language moved over a string. You can kind of just move it left or right, and you'll get some of that stuff in there. So I mentioned that I'd be happy to demonstrate some things on mandolin too. I'm not sure who's tuned in right now. I see that there are some folks here. It doesn't show me, unless you comment, I think, doesn't show me what instrument you're playing or anything. So if anyone out here is, I'm happy to, you know, keep on going. But if there's any specifics regarding maybe mandolin, I will be happy to have that instrument right here as well to demonstrate. Maybe I will at the end of this, but I want to make sure I do hit on every little thing I mentioned in the blast here. So let me move now to specific sounds. let's see. What is that on the front of my? Oh, this probably you're referring to. That is my favorite. This is a D'Addario tuner. So it gives me. Let's see here if you can see that. It gives me the pitch. It won't. Let's see. I have to put it on here. But anyway, yeah, it's going to read the pitch of the string, so I can tune when it's really loud. So it's great in a festival setting or any really loud setting. This older version that I have on this one actually also has a metronome, which they got rid of that feature in the newer ones. I haven't been able to convince people how awesome I think having a metronome on there is. Not that I use it for practice, but in a live scenario when I need to call a tune at the right speed, if I know the BPM, I can put it on here, and it's a visual metronome. It'll show me how fast it goes. So I really like that feature, and it's only on the old ones, which are very hard to find. All right, so let's see what else is here. Thanks for commenting, folks. The bow gets in the way of my mandolin. Yeah, I know the feeling. Although I have to say that when I am, there's many a day where I don't have the energy to hold up the fiddle and play all proper, and I have practiced a lot of things that I intended to practice on fiddle on mandolin, laying down on my bed, staring at the ceiling. If I don't have the energy to stand up. Oh, I see another comment here. Love that you share your knowledge with us. Oh, of course. An adult beginner on the fiddle and appreciate you. Thank you so much. Know the musician. Thank you so much for that. I will just keep on going then. I want to address kind of broad concepts. So I talked about double stops. Another thing I would focus on is a big area of my focus is using specific sounds in my improvisation. So I don't kind of just randomly improvise. I always think about a specific area of focus. So that might be, well, let me demonstrate them all. So I'll just play this over a G chord. All right. This is kind of what I was mentioning before, is kind of a little bit superior to what I think of just as a drone note. This is a drone chord. Okay. So if I wanted to improvise in a way that was really, just kind of vanilla safe notes, I would use the pentatonic scale. Okay, so that's the pentatonic scale, and that would be what would be called exploring. That kind of practice would be called exploring an extended range version of a scale. So that's the pentatonic scale, which I have a video on my YouTube channel. But it's whenever those notes occur across one position, in this case, first position. So before shifting to these next notes, I'm going to ignore those two notes. I'm just going to play the notes in first position. So that's called extended range. And it would be what I would learn after I learned my basic pentatonic scale. So that would be, for example, this pattern and also this pattern. Once you learn those two patterns, then you can start combining them to get extended range. And then once you know them from kind of the bottom to top, then you want to be able to freely explore them. And that would be an area of practice. You would just say, I'm going to use my pentatonic scale to be creative and improvise. Pentatonic scales lead themselves really well to double stops. So all those combining notes of the pentatonic scale give you some really safe double stops to play. So one area of focus can be practicing pentatonic scales either in extended range over one drone chord, or you could go over a song and switch from chord to chord. Or you could just use one scale over the entire song. You can do all these different things. So anyway, that's the pentatonic scale, I like to think of it as vanilla, safe, all nice notes, right? But it's nothing too tricky. Okay, we can add one note to that to make it what's called the major blues scale. Again, separate video on my YouTube channel for this. That sounds like this. All right, so that's, well, if I played it alone. That's the what's called extended range major blues scale. So that is a different color that I might use to play over a song or to improvise over a song. So I'll kind of use that a little bit so you can kind of hear that sound. Again, this is over a G drone, but not just a G note, a G chord. So here's the major blues scale, kind of exploration of the major blues scale. All right, so that's kind of exploring the major blues scale. Again, it's a little bit darker, but still it's still a generally bright sound. You are pushing kind of more in a minor direction when you add that note, that extra note to the pentatonic scale. And so that is one way that I can highlight that feeling in music. The other kind of way to paint over a G chord or a song in G is to play more minor related things. So you can do the same thing with the minor pentatonic scale. Okay, so extended range. So you notice this is a darker, kind of more minor sound. So I can kind of explore that sound over this one chord, or I could do that over a song. And I just kind of explore with curiosity. You can think, oh, well, how can I highlight the sound of these? I can maybe try slow slides into each note. Think of slides down. I can think of something like a big jump. Or a jump down. Like a... Right, and that's, again, something I just heard someone do. I liked it. And then I tried to incorporate it as a general concept in my practice. Right? So that's called the minor pentatonic scale, and that's one note away from what most people know as the blues scale, which is actually the minor blues scale. That's the minor blues scale in what's called extended range. And that's just all the notes of the scale as it occurs in one position, which I recommend practicing all this stuff in first position. You can get a lot of what you practice in first position will transfer over just fine to to third position or second position and things like that too. So that's a broad sound that I might use to kind of paint over a song. If I were to use one of those on that same song I was demonstrating before, which the link is in the chat now for that. Let's see. I think this is the key of B or something here. Yeah, key of B. So if I were kind of focusing on the key of B, I could have. I could focus on the major blues scale of each chord that's playing. I could use minor blues. So that would be focusing on the minor side of things over this song. And again, I use this one song because it's easy, not because it's necessarily the right thing to do, nor am I playing very musically or sensitive to the singer when I'm practicing in this way. All that's to do is just to save time. It's like, you know, in a real life scenario, if you're trying to compliment a singer, you're playing in the spaces. So you're waiting patiently for them to stop so that people can hear and pay attention to the lyrics, right? But if I'm focusing on a sound or being able to play fluently over a chord, when I'm practicing at home and I don't have to worry about covering up a singer's lyrics, I just play through everything, all the spaces and things like that. So it just kind of maximizes the amount of time that you have to spend on each chord. All right, we see some new questions in. This is great. So I see Lynn Wills said, this information is huge. I'm an adult beginner on fiddle and mandolin. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. And another question here. Can you use sevenths in those runs with double stops? I love sevenths. Yeah, so the seven, well, you can have a major seven or a flat seven. Generally, when people say seven, they mean a flat seven. And that actually is in the minor pentatonic scale that I was just demonstrating. So if but you know, if you wanted to incorporate more sevenths in your playing, you could challenge yourself creatively in your practice to use the minor blues kind of sound, but also to focus on the seventh scale degree. So that would sound like this. So starting on the seventh each time. In a real life scenario, you'd want to mix up where you start. But when I'm practicing, if I like the sound of sevenths, I'm going to try to play every chord change, every musical idea starting on the seventh. The seventh of F sharp chord is E. Of B chord is A. Of E chord is D. So that's kind of focusing on the flat seven. All right. Cool. I see another question here. I think I'm going to call it in about 5 minutes. That would mark an hour. Unless we get a bunch of questions. If we get a bunch of questions, I'll be happy. I'm having fun demonstrating these. So let me just check in really quickly to see what I originally kind of promised to cover and make sure I hit some of those scenario or all those. Let's see here. Voicing double stops. Yep. Playing through chord changes. Yep. Incorporating rhythms or bowings. I didn't really talk about transposition and microimprovisations. I think I'll talk about microimprovisation a little bit too. All right. So I see another question here from Anne-Marie. So I'd be interested in your process for learning new tunes. Oh, I'd be happy to share my process for learning new tunes. In fact, I might make that like a real legit snippet of this and then take it as a separate video, because I've been meaning to make a video about how I learn new tunes or people's solos. So I will finish with those two ideas unless there are any other questions. The other one was microimprovisation. So microimprovisation is the way that I practice basically on a fiddle tune or a break. So if I were to practice microimprovisation on Cherokee Shuffle, right? I take the first idea. That's kind of the first idea. And I can even make it shorter. So that first kind of, you know, pickup notes to the beginning of this melody. Practicing with micro improvisation would be, sometimes I like to do this with that drum machine, which maybe I'll do now just for the sake of demonstration here. Or actually, I could even do this. No, I'll do the drum machine for this, I think. Let's see. Here we go. All right, so I would take the first few ideas, and I ask myself, how many different ways can I play that? Usually, I ask myself, could I change just the rhythm, or? But I also try to incorporate slides, double stops, or other fiddly things. So like, so that's a double stop I can use. That's a double stop I can use. I can use that one. All right. And you can also kind of change your starting point. But I like to think of there being, specific notes when you're improvising over a melody that you want to kind of focus your attention on. So that would be, that C sharp is kind of a target note. But other ways you can kick off, like all that, you can use those closed position double stops we talked about. And then you just go one phrase at a time and you try to do it 5 different ways. So that's the next one. You can add a slide, double stop, a bowing, like the Nashville shuffle. I could play through that whole melody with the Nashville shuffle, which would be a form of practicing micro improvisation. But I like to use short little ideas, so like just that much, and then so how can I play that differently? Double stop, slide, or you can change the general shape of it. But I try to keep the arrival points the same. So that's kind of the next idea. Changing the rhythm slightly. Adding a double stop. Adding a couple extra notes. Let's see. Right, and again, I'm kind of approaching this with curiosity. Where are my fingers kind of fumbling? Where are the ideas that are in my head versus not? Sometimes if the idea is not in my head, I will use concepts like blues scales and things like that to help me get other ideas, right? So it's kind of the next idea. I try to get the skeleton of the melody. That would be kind of a notey micro improvisation. I could add double stops. I also added a Nashville shuffle there. You could add the entire tune. You can practice with different shuffles. Let's see. That's the Georgia shuffle. So you can add any of those shuffles. That's another separate video I have called Country Bluegrass kind of Fiddling Essentials or something like that. It's all on shuffle bowings. And also for people who are readers, I have those written down. But shuffle bowings could be one area of micro improvising on a tune or a melody. You could also do what I say, to take little short ideas and try to play them 5 different ways. Adding things like double stops, slightly different notes, or let's see, slides. So anyway, that's a little short thing on micro improvisation. I want to answer this last question. Again, if there are any other questions, feel free to put them in, but I'll probably end the live soon. I'd be interested in your process for learning new tunes. So learning new tunes. I like this. My favorite way to learn a tune. Well, here are some of the strategies I use. Number one strategy is on a commute, play the tune over and over again at 50% speed. All right. Now, generally, if it's an easy tune, as in it doesn't have a lot of chord changes, it doesn't have a lot of funky notes or weird rhythms, over the course of like an hour of listening to a tune at 50% speed over and over again, I will be able to pick it up. I'll be able to get my instrument and kind of play it because I'd have sung through it a bunch, and I can kind of see the shape of it on my instrument. So easiest way I would say to learn tunes is to you don't have to use any fancy software. Just pull it up on YouTube, use their built-in slowdown feature, listen to it at 50%, and be able to sing all of them. Now, what I would do with singing is I would first sing the contour and the rhythm of it rather than the actual notes. So, for example, I was recently working on Bronwyn Keith Hines' tune "Open Water," right? So, actually, I'll pull it up on YouTube, so I'll show you how I learned this. This particular one, I don't think I learned on a commute. I think I literally learned with a cup of tea, like staring at the ceiling or something. I really focus on a lot of listening first. So learning this crazy fast tune here, I learned all the notes first. It's like right, lots of notes and things like that. So what I did is I slowed it down. I'll do 75% now just for points. And what I started with is just tapping the beat, the big beat, and I sang the contour of it. So it would be something like this. I know the notes now, but it would be something like this if I had just started. You get the idea. So I fall basically get the contour. Well, I was demonstrating purely rhythm there. So keeping the beat, the big beat, even though it's slowed down, and I'm singing along with that with the tune, whatever the melody is, whether it's a simple kind of song or a fiddle tune that's really complicated like this one. I'm tapping the beat, listening to it slowly, and speaking the rhythm. Step one. Now, as I go on repeat and I get more confident with the rhythm, as it pertains to the big beat, which is I was tapping, like a lot of people kind of start to feel it twice as fast when you slow it down. You want to still feel that bigger beat. That's how you kind of solidify those rhythms. So that's what I do first, and then I try to catch the contour of it. So that would be maybe not singing the notes perfectly, but I'm getting like ba da ga da da ga 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 da. So it's a little bit more pitch, but still focusing on the rhythm, right? Finally, I would sort of, as I listen to it over and over again, I would, figure out what those problem spots are, where my pitches are really straying most, and then I might have to like kind of listen a little bit more closely. I really like using a free tool called Transpose, which is a Chrome extension that allows you to not only slow down, but also change the pitch or loop specific sections of, say, YouTube videos or any MP3 that you play, really. So I'll loop a specific section of a song and listen to that, that section alone on repeat to get the pitches more accurately. And the final step after I've done all this listening is to work it out on my instrument. So I spend a lot of time apart from the instrument. And even before I like to play it, I actually I prefer, when I don't have all the pitches perfectly, I prefer to put my fingers down on the instrument as I'm listening to it. And then, and make sure before I'm kind of playing over the recording and maybe getting wrong notes, I make sure what I'm singing is the same as the song. So that would be something like this, Yeah. So I don't, obviously I haven't practiced this a very long time, so I don't, my left hand does not know it. But that would be like sort of a test. I would kind of, you know, pluck my way through it and things like that. And if I don't know where a pitch is, I'll pluck through it and things like tune over and over again, and being able to sing it and kind of embody it first. That's how I approach learning tunes. And then when it comes to getting tunes up to speed, my favorite thing to do, like with this tune, if I wanted to perform this or whatever, and I wanted to kind of be able to quote that melody, I would put it in the amazing slow downer, and I would practice one section at a time and make it go 1% faster every time it repeats. So I would start it at 50 or 60%, spend 20 minutes playing through it a little bit faster each time. And let me think if there are any other strategies I have for learning tunes. I definitely like to combine this kind of really intense listening with another task. Like, so it might be listening to the tune on a commute, like I mentioned before. I often learn lyrics or new melodies or breaks while I am doing laundry or folding things, or sometimes when I'm going on a walk, or I'm just like trying to get some sunlight in my eyes because I use computers a lot, things like that. So I often try to practice these things outside of the context of my instrument. So hopefully that gives you some strategies. I'm trying to think last minute if there's any other, how do I learn tunes? Oh, I am a reader as well. So I don't like reading. I never read a tune while playing my instrument, but what I will do is look at the tune and listen to it at the same time. So I actually learned a ton of fiddle tunes by keeping this like old Mel Bay book next to my bed and reading it like nighttime reading. I would just read the fiddle tunes. I sometimes listen to them and read them. I wonder if I have that book here. Let's see. I do. Look at that. Haha. How I would keep this next to my bed, and I would just read the tunes like they were a book. You're like Stony Lonesome. I would be in bed and I would go da 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 da, and I'll do the exact same thing that I mentioned before. Learn the rhythm first, and then try to get the contour. I see that goes up. Do da da do ga di go di go di ga da ga do ga do ga da ga do ga do ga do da. Like, it might not be perfect, right? But I'm getting contour and rhythm. And if I needed help with that, if I wasn't a great reader, I'd listen to it at the same time. But listening to it and kind of pointing at the notes as they go by and keeping the beat and things like that. Everything that I mentioned before, sans sheet music would also apply if you're using sheet music. So I think, just in a total review, and if there are any last minute questions, I will answer that. Hope that was an adequate answer of Anne-Marie regarding how I practice learning new songs or new melodies, learning new tunes. But in a total review here, I've talked about how I practice playing through chord changes and work on practicing chord changes with double stops and vibrato and shifting and long bows and tone and things like that, focusing on a lot of different things at the same time. Talked about how to voice double stops with open and closed position. A video demonstrating that is on my channel. And there's also, if you're a reader, those double stops are written out. We talked about incorporating rhythms and bowings like the Nashville Shuffle and the Georgia Shuffle as a part of your microimprovisation. That's also a video on my YouTube channel called Bluegrass Country. I think it's You Play Bluegrass Country Fiddle or something. You'll see that on my channel. And if you're a reader, that's written out. The essential double stops, or the bowings, I think it's shuffle bowings, I think it's called. Talking about transposition, so learning a melody, either a fiddle tune or a melody, and playing it starting on each finger, first finger, second finger, third finger, and open string or fourth finger. And that gives you all the keys if you practice it that way. And then finally, I gave you some strategies to learn on how I learn melodies. So that's listening to them at a slower pace on repeat, learning the rhythm first, along with the slow, what's called macro beat. So the same beat that you tap if it was a full speed song, when you slow it down, you keep that macro beat even just slower. And you're saying da da ga da da ga da ga da ga, just the rhythm of the tune first. And as you get the rhythm, you start to incorporate contour. You're getting more of the shape of the melody. And then you get a little bit more particular. You try to get the notes, on your 50th listen or whatever. And then finally, I start to work it on my instrument. And if I'm aiming for speed, I use the amazing slow downer, 1% faster each time. So thank you so much. If you'd like to learn more about this, I've got, this is the sort of work that I do on my online classes every week. This week, I'm going to Raleigh, North Carolina for the International Bluegrass Music Association's World of Bluegrass event. So I'm actually holding my classes rather than on Tuesday night, like they usually are, tonight at 7 o'clock for mandolin and 8 o'clock for fiddle. So if you'd like to work on this stuff with me, this is the focus of our weekly classes that are happening again tonight at 7 and 8 o'clock. People who are regular attendees of those classes or are members of the online school have access to all the sheet music that I mentioned, and also kind of personal feedback from me. So if that's something you're interested in, check out my website, austinscelzo.com. Scelzo spelled Scelzo. And that's in the top there. I believe some of this will be able to be replayed. So again, if you are interested in any of the sorts of things that we covered, make sure to check that out. And even if you're just wanting to look for some inspiration, check out my website. I've got a blog, some fiddle, mandolin, guitar, vocal inspiration, pages and pages of hyperlinked, my thoughts about practicing and playing and things like that. So, if you're ever feeling like you want some more inspiration, just check out that and just, work your way through my website there. So thanks again, everybody. I see some folks being very kind, and thank you. This is my first live stream. I hope to do this again sometime, maybe once a month. Thanks so much for being here, and take care, everybody.